It's my pleasure to present to you Linda Hendrickson. I met Linda about 2 years ago in Joyful Refuge Sangha, which is a small Sangha practicing Thich Nhat Hanh Buddhism in Portland. And during our getting to know each other in COVID, I haven't met any of these people in person until recently. We had to do meetups on Zoom. So I did a meetup with Linda, and I found that she's been a weaving instructor and an artisan for over 30 years. And she's one of the few doing ply-split braiding, which she'll share with you in her slides. And I learned that she's a part of Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, and she's been working on earth-friendly eating for some time. So after Linda talks, we'll break into the small groups, then we'll come back to the large group and share some of what came up in the small groups. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Linda. Take it away, Linda.
Thank you so much, Emily, and hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to see all of you here today, and I'm really excited to be here to have a chance to share some of what I've learned about food and climate. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, so I just tell you quickly what I'm going to show you here. I'm going to start with 3 slides of my food and climate related fiber art. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how my consciousness and actions have changed over the years, and a little bit about what I've learned and what I'm doing now. And really, my goal in sharing this is to support you if you're already on the path of climate-friendly eating. And if you aren't, I hope I can encourage you to start. So this is actually the first piece that I made relating to food, and it was, well, I was thinking of a rainbow of colors of raw vegetables when I was choosing the yarn for it. Then the next one is, actually it's behind me here when you can see what's in my background. This is a piece that when I started working on it, I was thinking about the fires in Oregon and California in 2018 and 2019. And the images around the top are part of the Extinction Rebellion logo, and also kind of the sand going through the hourglass. And this piece was on display at the Latimer Quilt and Textile Center in Tillamook in September of 2020 when the fires were burning in that area. And this is, well, the title is actually of this piece is a quote from a climate scientist that I heard on NPR about the melting of the Arctic and the peril of people living in Earth's low-lying islands and coastal areas. And this piece will be on display at the Gardino Gallery in Northeast Portland in February. So there were 2 really important influences on the way that I eat. My weaving teacher, one of my most important weaving teachers, and also my spiritual teacher. So I'll just say a few words about each of them. I didn't really know anyone who was a vegetarian until I took a class from the great British weaver and teacher Peter Collingwood in 1993. And a few years later at a workshop, I just asked him why he was a vegetarian. And this is all he said, but his really simple response really stuck in my mind, and I did definitely start thinking about it. And in 2000, I started attending Joyful Refuge Sangha and reading books by our teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. I also learned about the practice of mindfulness, including mindful eating, and it was lovely to hear Keith read the 5 contemplations, because I've heard them many, many times. And also I learned about contemplating with full awareness the food on my plate and its true cost. So partly as a result of these 2 important teachers, I made a commitment to become a vegetarian in 2001, which was right after my dad's funeral. So actually, in all, it took me about 40 years to go from eating the standard American diet. I grew up, my young childhood was in Wisconsin. ate the typical food there, and you know, the unfortunate thing is we just really don't have that kind of time left now. So I just want to talk a little bit about animal agriculture and how it relates to climate change. Livestock production is the largest global source of methane, which is far more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. And a report from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization showed that global meat production creates more greenhouse gases than all of transportation, so more than all the cars, trains, planes, and ships in the world combined. One reason that animal agriculture contributes so much to climate change is the huge number of animals raised for food every year. So this slide just compares the number of humans on the planet in 2014 with the number of animals bred for food. In that year, there were 7.3 billion people and 67.9 billion animals being raised for food. So that's almost 70 billion with a B. That means that the livestock population is actually 10 times the human population on Earth. And in the US alone, there are over 9 billion land animals raised for food every year. So the huge number of animals produce a tremendous amount of waste. Farm animals in the United States produce 44 times more waste than the entire US population. And most of it sits in giant manure lagoons that release nitrous oxide, which is another greenhouse gas that's more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. So all of that manure and also all of the fertilizer, you know, that's used to grow the corn and the soy that's fed to animals on the factory farms is also a leading cause of water pollution. It runs off the local streams and rivers, eventually go to the Mississippi and then into the Gulf of Mexico, where it creates a gigantic dead zone. So the reason that that so many animals are raised for food every year is really just because there's so much demand. Globally, we eat more meat per person per year than the government dietary recommendations. And here in this country, we eat about twice as much meat as recommended in the dietary guidelines for Americans. So here is a really helpful comparison of the greenhouse gas emissions from some common foods. And this chart shows the greenhouse gas emissions per kilogram of consumed food. I really like this chart because it divides each bar into two sections. The green is production emissions, like raising animals and growing crops. And the gold is what is called the post-farm gate emissions. So that would include processing, transport, retail, cooking, and waste disposal. And you can see that lamb and beef are, and cheese have the highest emissions, and lentils are the lowest. And this slide shows another way to look at the data by relative carbon emissions per calorie. And so again, presented in a different way, beef at the bottom, it has the highest emissions, and legumes, so that would be beans and lentils at the top, have the lowest. This is a new book that I'm still reading, and I'm really enjoying it. Highly recommend it. The author is Sarah Bridle. She's a professor at Manchester University, and she divides her research time between food-related climate change and astrophysics. This book is written in a very personal style with no judgment, and she starts with breakfast, coffee, tea, sugar, milk, toasted jam, and then she moves throughout the day. I love the fact that a lot of what she eats are very traditional British foods, but throughout the day, then she builds, on what she's already talked about. So she adds and combines and substitutes ingredients and analyzes things like apples and oranges and different kinds of sandwiches, tikka masala, fish and chips, apple pie, and a piece of cake, and lots of other things. And all through the book, she weaves in stories about how plants and animals are grown and raised for food, everything that causes emissions, from feed and fertilizer to transportation and cooking methods. So when you look at the bar charts in her book, all of those things and the emissions that they produce are included. So after looking at her book, I created this bar graph for this presentation that I'm going to show you. And it really shows the challenge that we share. So this shows the total greenhouse, I'm going to get my little cursor up here, the total greenhouse gas emissions from food for the average person per day. This is globally. The global average is here on the left. And actually, these are in grams. I did use grams, which she uses in the chart that she has, because when you're talking about individual items of food, you have to be at that scale. So this is the global average, and then the US average, you can see, and China average right now, but of course that's growing. And then to keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we need to cut all emissions from all sources in half. And so our goal is going to be this one right here, from the blue bar. So this is where we are right now in terms of just food emissions per person per day, and we need to get to here. I have been learning a lot about climate solutions from the book Drawdown, and also the website. And I heard that many of you are already familiar with this book. So as you may know, there are 17 solutions in the food sector in Drawdown that are discussed. And in this slide, I've highlighted the 3 that can really be tackled at the individual level. I'm just going to talk briefly about 2 of them and show you what my husband and I are doing. And as I go through these slides, I really want you to just keep in mind, mostly this is my opinion. I mean, I definitely have facts, here, but a lot of what I'm going to say is what we're doing. So you can keep that in mind. So the plant-rich diet, I would say, when it comes to plants, the more the better. There are some exceptions, avoiding air-freighted food and food from heated greenhouses, but generally speaking, the more the better. And we could lower greenhouse gas emissions and have better health, especially in terms of preventing chronic disease. The economic benefits are really tied directly to improved health, with savings in both healthcare costs and lost productivity. So my husband John and I tend to favor really simple food. These are really typical examples of what we like to eat. We tend to have steel-cut oats for breakfast, kind of varying the fruit that we have with it, veggie bowls for lunch, soup and salad for dinner, or sometimes, like you see the Tennessee corn pone there in the top, something like that. I guess the main thing I've learned from reading that book, let's see, that new one that I'm reading, was the oven. So I'm really going to have to think about making sure that I have both racks full if I use the oven. And we will be sending you links. So all the links that you see and the resources and everything, you will get that in an email later. But on my website, I have all the recipes for all of these dishes that you're looking at in here, and a few other favorites. So it's not overwhelming, just our very favorite things are up there. Let's see. So the other solution that we'll look at is reduced food waste. And I was really shocked when I learned that about 1/3 of the food that's grown or raised ends up wasted. And it made me think about a restaurant that I went to once that had it was a buffet that said, take as much as you want, but eat all you take. And I think that's definitely a good thing that we need to keep in mind. And food loss from low-income countries is typically unintended, but in the higher income areas, there's more willful food waste, like rejecting produce that isn't the ideal size or shape, or ordering or preparing too much and then not eating leftovers. And wasted food that isn't composted ends up in the landfill. And if it decomposes without oxygen, it produces methane. So that's why food waste is such a problem. So here's a look in our refrigerator. And we buy most of our food in bulk from People's Food Co-op, and we store it in glass jars. So it's really easy to see what we have. We like to group things so they're always in the same place. So like you can see on the bottom left there is a little container that has jars of nuts and seeds. And I do keep a lot of nuts and seeds actually in the freezer, but for ease to get at. There's some of them in that container. And then up in the upper right, we have both rolled oats and steel cut oats. And we also really make a big effort to try to keep the most perishable things at the front. And we try not to keep our refrigerator too full. This is, because it'll make it a lot easier to find things if it's not too full. And let me just point out that these, I think this is like peas, edamame, and corn. And so I keep most of that, of course, I buy some of this stuff frozen, and then I just decant a little bit at a time. And that helps with food waste. And then one other thing that John and I do to be sure we don't waste food is that we always take our own reusable containers to restaurants. And we always make sure to eat the leftovers in the next day or two. So I have done a lot of reading about healthy, healthy food, but the focus on climate friendly is more recent for me. And of course, the thing that's really exciting is that climate friendly food is the most healthy food. So when you're shopping, try to stay in the produce and bulk sections. Bring your own bags. We actually save bags from frozen food to use for getting our bulk food, and try to stay away from packaging as much as you can. And then the part about buying seasonal or regional is really, again, to avoid food that is shipped by air or grown in heated greenhouses, because both of those add to food-related emissions. So these are just some of the books on food and climate that I've read during the past year. These have all been published since 2018. So it's very exciting to see that there's lots of things we can be reading to understand more about this subject, lots of facts about the problems, as well as lots of wonderful recipes. And we will be emailing you the list of these books. I just want to mention Eat for the Planet briefly, because I think it's a really good place to start if this is all new to you. It has really bold, simple, easy to understand graphics and explanations of all of the issues that are involved in the industrialized food system. And also another book, How Bad Are Bananas? This is about your carbon footprint in general, not just about food. This is a great book, and I read the copy that is available in the library, but then I bought the new edition, which was published in 2020. And I was really happy to see that it has a whole new section which is called What Can We Do? And so here in that part, the author talks about why individual action matters, and that the first step is really understanding your own carbon footprint. And bananas are climate friendly, which is good. For local recipes and discussion, again, we will be sending these links to you. And I do want to encourage you to get in touch with me. I love to eat, I love to cook, and I love to talk about food. I'm happy to, answer any questions that I can, or do research even. I love that part too. And Linda Tyler is a wonderful local vegan chef, and she is a cooking instructor. I've taken many classes from her. She's now teaching online through PCC, and everything she makes is delicious. And I really do want to encourage you to join PlantBased Portland, which is a meetup group. And my husband and I have been hosting this since 2015. Before COVID, we always had a monthly potluck. And we had a particular way we did the meeting every time. We would first gather in the dining room and go around the food that people had brought, and everybody would talk about their food. And we did encourage people to bring the source for the recipe, so that people could make it themselves. And then we would get our food and go into the other room where we had these tables set up to eat, and we would have a little casual conversation, and then go around the table where each person would have some time to answer the question, what's on your mind about food? So that is a huge topic, and I love those conversations, and I would say I learned something every single time. And since COVID, we have been meeting on Zoom. It's not the same, but at least we are still able to have a conversation. Then I just wanted to mention three of our favorite restaurants. These are all in Southeast Portland, about within a mile from our house. And just to promote them, I'm going to tell you some of my favorite things that I like. So at the Sudra, I really like the roasted and tempeh salad, and they have a lot of bowls. And the one I like is the ota tofu simmered in kale and sunflower seed curry. But at the other two, which are not vegan restaurants, it's easy to order plant-based. And Pepino's has a really extensive vegan menu, but I have like a 20-year habit because we go there every Friday. I just order a bunch of side dishes, black beans, grilled vegetables, guacamole, and sweet tequila sauce, and I just pile it all together into a big salad. And then at Imjai Thai, I really like the pumpkin curry. That comes with a red rice, which is really, really great, although rice is a little bit high on the emissions standpoint, because the growing of rice does produce methane. So here are some reliable websites that I like: Drawdown, the Factory Farming Awareness Coalition, and Nutrition Facts. And then you can learn a lot by just Googling different strings like this. So climate-friendly food or climate-friendly recipes. You can go, click on images where you can see lots of pictures of food or graphs that present data in different ways. So that's a great way. You just have to be sure you're getting your information from a reliable source. And so I'll just end this by with this quote from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, that's the only thing that ever has."